Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Look forward to a good discussion about something I'm very passionate about, and that is retail and the subsequent recruitment of retail and bringing in new to market retail into Lake Worth Beach, which is something we've been doing for a very long time, and we really appreciate the partnership with the CRA. We've got a long-standing relationship, and we're very familiar and very passionate about Lake Worth Beach. So my name is Clay Kraft. I'm the Vice President of Client Services for Retail Strategies. I've been with the company about 7 years. We are a national retail consulting firm, so we work directly with municipalities, CRAs, economic development corporations to basically recruit new retail into their markets. So I'm going to begin with a pop quiz, and you don't have to answer aloud. You can just answer in your head, see if you can get it right. But I want to just kind of talk about the importance of retail and just kind of all understand why it is important. So on average, how many jobs does a typical quick service restaurant bring to a community? 15. So 15 jobs. A lot of times there's a lot of focus on bringing in industrial or office complexes to bring in a large number of jobs. But if you start to stack up your wins with just your quick service restaurants, we're looking at 15 full-time equivalent jobs. What percentage of jobs in the United States are retail related? 25%. So a quarter of the jobs in the United States are either retail or directly related to retail. So retail is vitally important to our economy. What percentage of retail is considered small business? 98%. So 98% of all our retail is small business. So that's businesses with 50 employees or less. So small business is a cornerstone of what we do from retail recruitment. What is the largest consumer group, demographic group in the United States? Millennials. So whether or not you have a high contingency millennials or not, it is vitally important to understand that, because millennials would have they'd rather have an experience than have a thing, right? So as retailers are changing to the changing consumer behaviors and demands, they are really focusing on giving that one-off experience and having a special time. So, and that kind of trickles down for retail into having that experience. So really focusing on merchandising and making sure that you as those consumers come into your store, they feel like they have that concierge service and everything is well lit. So what percentage of retail sales occur online? I bet nobody gets this right. 15%. All the headlines you hear is, online sales are dominating retail, and retail's dead. And here, I'm here to tell you, to build the bull case for brick and mortar retail, that of all the headlines and all the Amazon sales, it's still only 15%. Now, somebody said 53%. Online retail sales might be gaining by a margin of 53% year over year. And we definitely, COVID definitely pulled that into the future a little bit, but still, with that, it's still only 15% of all retail sales occur online. What percentage of consumers prefer to shop in-store versus online? 78%. So we still, when you buy that shirt, you want to try it on. When you buy that couch, you want to sit on it. So brick and mortar is certainly not going away. Retailers are just having to find ways to be innovative, because the biggest challenge that retailers have now, let's just say that once COVID ends and we can resume normal life and go into stores and not have any regulations, the biggest challenge that retailers were facing was just getting people into stores. So retailers were already preparing for what COVID did to us. They were already preparing for convenience, for delivery, and that's the real key. If you're a small business, if you're a retailer, getting your business to the people, whether that's having that online presence, that omni-channeling experience, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But it is vitally important that you do provide that omni-channel experience. So omni-channeling is the seamless integration between bricks and clicks. So I think I think the stat right now is 60% of small businesses still to this day right now do not have an online presence. And what I say by that is not just a website. They don't have a Facebook page. They don't have an Instagram. If you are not using at the bare minimum those social channels to drive people to your stores, you're missing out on a tremendous amount of sales. So that's my little soapbox there. Is if you're a small business owner, really put some time and focus on that. Shopify makes a very easy built-in plugin that runs your POS. It creates your website. It can make a name for your company. There's so much technology right now that needs to be embraced. That's really going to help the small businesses. So of course, I heard the gasp when I only said 15% of retail is online, because all you hear about is the retail apocalypse. We don't want to shop in stores. We don't want to do anything anymore. We don't want to congregate. I promise you, this is just a phase. Brick and mortar retail is not dead. It is certainly changing. You look at the indoor malls; those are antiquated dinosaurs. The future of retail is not these large 200,000 square foot shopping centers. It is more decentralized. It's going to be a mix of retail uses, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you kind of look and you say, well, technology is disrupting retail so much, but hey, 100 years ago, Sears catalog was the biggest retailer in the world. And what is Sears now? Sears is just a real estate holding company. But Sears became innovative and they had the Sears catalog. Whereas, retailers now, Amazon, the online giant, they're going very heavy into brick and mortar retail because they understand that brick and mortar is key to their success. It's that, it is a three-pronged stool for sure. Briefly hit coronavirus. From a retail recruitment standpoint, over the last 12 months, it's been very challenging, just because retailers have just really had to sit on their hands. It was very hard to predict their future growth. It was very hard for them to just meet to have real estate committee. Most of the retailers were not on the road. But a lot of innovation has changed, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the innovation that retailers have done, and also some of the innovation that landlords have gone through. So you think about technology, and if you look at something as simple as a smartphone, and think about a retailer such as Radio Shack. So on the right side, you can see all the things that have now been consolidated into one single device. That is a smartphone. Just everybody has a smartphone now. So the smartphone kind of represents the consolidation that technology has brought. So I guarantee you probably use your phone as your alarm clock. You don't buy the standalone GPS anymore because you have it on your phone. You don't carry around the camera anymore. So you think about all the things that a retailer like Radio Shack sold in their store 15 years ago. It's no wonder Radio Shack went out of business because they refused to change, whereas one device came along and disrupted their entire business model, and they just refused to pivot. So one of the things that retailers are doing is really bolstering the convenience. So you look at the delivery services for groceries such as Instacart, Shipt, and things like that. That was pretty mainstream before COVID, but they have really got tremendous tailwind. So we're going to see this delivery model, retail as a service almost become pretty mainstream. We've also seen restaurants, really put a heavy emphasis on the drive-through and pickup. I've heard some rumors that Chick-fil-A is going to be potentially going to a drive-through only model where, now they have the double wrap drive-through. They've because their indoor dining has been closed and has still continued to be closed. Their sales have doubled over the last year, and they've found out that, hey, people, people put a value on premium on convenience rather than other things. So the restaurants that really focus on convenience are really driving their sales up. So we see it with Chick-fil-A. We've seen Chipotle go through the Chipotle lanes, and they're probably not going to do another location that doesn't at least have that pickup window. We've seen Starbucks go to this model where it's a drive-through only, and they have kind of like the ghost kitchen, if you will. So that's one big trend that I really don't see going away. Another thing we've seen from innovations from landlords, and one thing I want to bring up because I think there's several shopping centers in Lake Worth or several pieces of real estate that could potentially benefit from this. But this is a shopping center in Tampa, Florida that BDG redeveloped. And I'm sure you've all heard the term end cap. So that is the physical end of a retail location that typically can accommodate either a drive-through, a pickup window, or a patio space. That's really good for the retailer because they can provide the convenience, and it's really good for the landlord because they can charge a premium rent for those end caps. But what BDG is innovated and coined their term is the end cap. So that is IN cap. So you can see here on the left, old dilapidated shopping center, low roof line, no architectural details. Just, if people are shopping, they want to go somewhere that feels safe, that looks safe, and that has some type of styling to it. So you can see the center here with Radio Shack. What they came in and did was they chopped the center of the space out and put they created essentially 4 end caps. You have the 2 physical end caps on the ends of the building, and then you also have the interior end caps. So the shopping center owner here was able to bump up their NOI by a 2 times multiplier and charge much higher rent. And the city got a win because they essentially got a new shopping center. And one thing that what needs to be focused on is this stat right here is a bar graph of the retail square footage per person in the United States. We are at 25 square feet built per person in the United States. The next closest country is Australia, and they are at 13 square feet per person. So we are almost double the amount of retail space built per person. So we are extremely over retailed as a country. A lot of that's going to go away as these malls become redeveloped and downsized. But a lot of retailers are really right-sizing their footprint. They're going to a smaller square footage model because they can get as much rent. They don't have these vast stores that consumers can't find their products in, and it works out well for everybody. So again, we work directly with municipalities, and why should municipalities really focus on their resources on retail? Retail recruits itself. Retailers just show up. While that is true in some cases, the communities that really put an emphasis and focus on recruiting retail in a proactive sense really get a leg up because retail recruitment is economic development. So you look at the job creation and the bottom line to a tax base for a community. Getting in a Home Depot or Costco. I mean, you see the job creation there. So we really do think of retail recruitment as economic development. But retail is complicated. And I've talked about some of the reasons why retail is complicated. Retailers have a constantly moving target. We're constantly disrupted by new trends, whether it be COVID or whether it be the retail apocalypse. And we're just overloaded with data. You have to, the quickest way to burn a bridge with a retailer is send them a site that just makes absolutely no sense for them, because that tells them that you didn't do their homework. So you really have to be in touch with what the retail community needs. So you have to be intimately familiar with their site selection, their and how many stores they're looking to do. So the bottom line is retail is very complicated, and that's kind of where we come in and kind of take that load off a city's plate. So our process is every given year we're going to take a deep dive look at the market, and we're gonna update our strategic plan. So every given year we're going to take a fresh look at the demographics. We're going to update our prospect list, and then we're going to take that prospect list and execute against it. And that is also keeping up to date with as much as we can with what's happening on the ground in Lake Worth from a real estate perspective. So we are taking those opportunities that lie within Lake Worth that are fits for national retail, and we are getting those out to the prospects that we think make sense for the market. So who we partner with, these are a couple of the sources that we use, and I would encourage you, if you are a property owner or a landlord and you don't employ brokers, tap into some of these resources. You do have to, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. So we'll talk later about how recruiting retail is an investment. But these are some of the services that we subscribe to just to keep us up to date with what retailers are moving, what they're looking to do, and our data providers are on the right. So at our disposal, we have contact information and site selection criteria for 9,700 different retailers. When we're looking at the market, we're looking at it from 7 different geographies. We've got 87 specific reports within our system. And then 3,300 unique variables. So the demographics can get wildly complicated very quickly. Because if you do the math on that, that's 23,000 variables to analyze. So what we want to do is we want to break it down to really the demographics that matter to retailers. So just give you a little bit of look into what we're about to talk about. We're going to talk about the demographic overview, and we're going to talk about how we use mobile data collection to analyze the market. And we'll talk about the custom trade area that we drew off the mobile data tracking. Talk a little bit about the retail gap analysis and the peer analysis. So if you look at Lake Worth and Lake Worth Beach, this is the city boundary that makes up the market. And a lot of people that, if you live in Lake Worth, you might think about the market as this arbitrary line drawn on the map. But retailers don't see that. When retailers are looking at a market, they are looking at the market through a lens such as this. And this is a very, very busy infographic, but if you start to break it down, it kind of tells the story. And probably from this Zoom level, it doesn't tell a great story, but this is a screenshot of an interactive system. But really, the story is, we're looking at the base layer. We're looking at median household income. So whether the incomes be high or low, they're different retailers have different metrics. Some retailers like low income. Some retailers like high income. So just because you have low income doesn't necessarily a bad thing for retailers. You just have to cater your recruitment to the retailers that make sense. The dot density, that represents where the population lives and where the population works. So you want to have that high daytime population for the restaurants because they need that daytime population to drive their lunch sales. And then we're looking at it through the lens of drive times and radius rings. So this is your demographic playbook. So this is looking at your market, and there's a lot of numbers here. I won't really go through it, but if you had, let's just say you're a football coach and you got that plastic card on your hip. These are the demographics that make the most sense to retailers as you're recruiting to them. So this is a 3, 5, 10 mile radius and a 3, 5, 10 minute drive time. These are the most standard geographies that retailers look at. So you have to cater your pitch to let's just say that McDonald's, they might just focus on a 5 minute drive time, whereas a Costco, they're going to look at what's happening within a 5 mile radius. So now I'm going to talk about our mobile data collection. So to boil it down and what mobile data collection is, if you download an app on your smartphone and it's one of those free apps, you've got that 54 pages of terms and services agreement. Somewhere in there, you're agreeing that if you have location services turned on in your device, when you access that app, you're going to be sending your location and selling your information. And our data provider is able to access that information. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to see visually the custom trade area for specific locations in your market, the update on a day-to-day basis. So, the only other way to do this is to look at credit card receipts or look at, license plates in the parking lot. Those are both very time-consuming endeavors. So we're able to break it down to see, the trailing 12 months, what is any given retail location in your market? What does the trade area look like? So I'm going to run you through a couple specific locations. We don't have access to every single location, but we do have access to a lot of locations. So I'm going to walk you through just a few of them. So the first one is run from the Publix supermarket. So this trade, the red line you're seeing is an automated trade area that our system uses an algorithm to draw. So this is saying the core trade area for your Publix supermarket lies within this red boundary. The pockets, the deeper the magenta, that means it's a higher number of consumers within that block group are shopping at this Publix location. The next one is going to be the Starbucks location. So visually, there's not a lot to derive, but basically what I'm taking you through is just giving you a look into access of how we come up with our custom trade area. The Dunkin' location, maybe a little bit more subdued, a little smaller of an area than than the Publix and the Starbucks. TJ's Deli, much larger trade area for that location. Walgreens. So you can see this trade area trades much further to the south of Lake Worth than the other locations. And then Bryant Park. Now this is very zoomed out for obvious reasons. But the visit count, according to our data provider for Bryant Park over the last year, 228,000 annual visits. And the median distance traveled is 10 miles. So, if the main feature is to get people into the market is to drive through Lake Worth Beach on the way to the beach. I think the data suggests that this is the biggest traffic driver to the market. I don't think I would get many objections to that. The visit count might not be exact, but it definitely paints a picture that one of your best assets is obviously the beach, and this is your big traffic driver. So this just shows where the main visitors to Bryant Park are coming from. So if you kind of layer all this together, it paints a picture. So this is the hand-drawn trade area that is layered of all those mobile data studies. So we want to take the median average of all those trade areas, and we want to develop your custom trade area. And this is going to be the core trade area. We could go through iterations of secondary and tertiary trade areas, but this is the core. The core consumer for the average retail location in Lake Worth is coming from inside this red boundary. Now, the demographics I'm going to talk about, these are all based on this custom trade area that we're looking here. So the estimated population for that boundary is 146,000. Projected growth rate of 2.2%. Average age is 40 years old. By race, it is 42% Latino, 40% white, and 15% African American. 64,800 households, and the median household income of this area is 46,000. Average housing unit comes in at 389,000. Primarily owner-occupied housing. 2.63 people per household on average. Daytime population is 145,000. So almost on par with the residential population. That's a really good selling point when you're talking to restaurants, like I mentioned. When restaurants are evaluating your market, they want to see that strong daytime population that at the very least, stays relatively flat, if not increases. It's predominantly a blue-collar workforce at 63%, with average employee salary coming in right at $52,000. I'll briefly talk about the gap. The gap, I think there's probably an overemphasis put on gap and gap analysis. While it is important and can paint a picture, it doesn't tell the full story. So we'll talk about some specific areas that within this trade area that there is a leakage of retail. So obviously the biggest one by far and away, and this probably will be, again, no surprise. There's 93 within that large trade area. There's still $93 million leaking out of that big trade area for clothing and accessory. I would say Lake Worth is pretty devoid of clothing and clothing accessory retailers, and it's certainly been a focus of ours. The next one is going to be furniture and home furnishings at $22 million. Building material, garden equipment, $22 million. Sporting goods, $19 million. Electronics and appliance, $5.2 million. And food and drinking service. Now, there's several ways to look at the gap. You could look at just the city boundary of Lake Worth. You could look at a 5-minute drive time, and I think these gaps would change a pretty good bit. But really, what I like to look at as I'm developing a prospect list for any given market, and I want to find out what retailers do I need to talk to. So the exercise that we do here is called our peer analysis. So we are taking a 10-minute drive time from your location and comparing it to the 10-minute drive time from other cities in Florida. Now, you might look at some of the names of these, Castleberry, Sarasota, Plantation, Deerfield Beach, and you might think, hey, Lake Worth is maybe really similar, or you might think it's very, dissimilar. But what this is telling us is that based on the residential population, the daytime population, the median household income, and the market supply, you are most identical on paper from a demographic perspective to these 8 communities within Florida. So, this right here doesn't tell us a lot, but the next slide paints the real picture. So on the blue column, the blue bar represents on average of all those communities, on average, how many retailers in each sector does that community on average have? So if you look at one, let's just look at one, that limited service restaurants. So limited service restaurants is going to be composed of the fast casuals and the quick services. So from Chipotle to down to Dairy Queen. So on average, your peer community has 23 of those locations within each of their markets, where Lake Worth Beach has 7. So you have a giant void to fill within that specific category, whereas home furnishing, furnishings. Your peer has 10, while you have 2. So, while the gap doesn't paint this rosy picture of, hey, there's all these dollars, if we look at it on a peer average, we've got some substantial gaps that need to be filled just from the sheer number of retailers. So what is the process to getting, so let's say you've got a good site, and you've got retailers you want to go after. Retailers are broken down by, you've got your real estate directors. Your real estate directors is going to have a region. A lot of real estate directors just cover Florida because it's basically its own country. But a lot of times real estate directors will cover a Southeast territory, so that might include Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. That's a lot of geographical ground to cover. So what do real estate directors do? They employ local tenant reps within these markets. So these are going to be brokers within your at least regional, if not local, community that have intimate knowledge with what's going on. You have also got your developers, you got your tenant, you got your franchisees. So there's a lot of decision makers, and it's really how do you boil it down to get to those actual decision makers. If you spend any time communicating with retailers and recruiting retailers, you know this already, but the timeline for a national, especially a national retail deal, takes a tremendous amount of time. So I'm going to take you through a little exercise of what is the timeline for a publicly traded national retailer. So let's just go through the exercise that, hey, the investors, they to increase the shares for their shareholders, they need to increase their market cap by, let's just say, $50 million over the next year to keep their growth where they want it. So the orders come down from the investors. Wall Street says, hey, to increase our market cap by 50 million, we need to do 30 locations. So the real estate director for Florida says, hey, within the next year, real estate director, you need to open up 10 locations in the state of Florida. So the real estate director takes those orders, they send it down, they do their analysis, they find out where are their holes they need to fill within Florida. Once they have their areas that they need to fill, those orders will go down to their local tenant rep. So the real estate director says to the tenant rep, say, hey, within the territory that you cover for our company, we need to open 2 of these 10 locations. Our site metrics, our site criteria, get after it and come back to me with the results. So the tenant rep will take those seed points, they'll identify the markets, they'll identify the sites, they'll go through the negotiations and really bird dogging locations. Once they do that, the tenant rep will come back and present those sites to the real estate director. If the real estate director gives them a thumbs up, they'll go through their pro forma, because if the store is not going to make a positive return because the rent's too high, or just the market will not support that location, you can quickly determine that through a quick pro forma exercise. When that is completed, let's just say the site makes sense, checks out, rent's kind of where it needs to be for the market. You present a letter of intent, which is just a handshake agreement that says we agree to occupy this space. Once that is cleared, that site location will now go to real estate committee. So on average, a real estate committee will meet every 2 weeks to every month, and the real estate director's job within that meeting is to present their site opportunities they have found to a group of their peers. So let's say this company has 5 real estate directors that covers the United States. Each real estate director is going to present they're going to present the bull case for their locations. The job of the other real estate directors is to be hypercritical of those locations, find out if there's any pitfalls, so forth and so on. If we pass that hurdle, we then go to a lease, either a lease or a purchase sale agreement, depending on how the space is and whether it's a ground up or backfill opportunity. Once you go through a lease, their developer will either build out the space or build the space to their specs, and then you have an opening. Now there's a lot of all that's to say is retail recruitment. There's a lot of pitfalls. I'd say most developers work on about a 10 to 20% success rate. So for every 10 sites they pursue, they're going to open up 1 to 2 locations on average. So it's a very low percentage game that developers and retailers are playing. But basically, you got to take a lot of shots. But at the end, the retailer is going to drive the decision. Only a small percentage of proposed sites equal new openings. It is this is certainly a marathon, not a sprint. We're in this for the long game. But at the end of the day, it's all about profit. Retailers have to make, they have to at least project sales that are going to come on par with their average sales projection. So where do we come into play here? So we work directly with the CRA. So our job is to, we're interfacing with local brokers, community leaders, property owners, developers, and retailers. We are in a position where we don't represent any specific retailer like a local, a tenant rep broker would, and we don't represent any specific site like a landlord rep would. So we are kind of in the middle of that equation, and we're able to quickly pivot that if we present a site to a retailer and they say no thanks, but hey, we want to be in Lake Worth Beach, we can quickly pivot and work with all parties to try to make that deal happen. So some of the tools that we have at our disposal, we have created a custom marketing guide and flyer for Lake Worth Beach, and if anyone wants access to that, I can certainly send that to you. It's a good tool, and if you're a landlord and you're recruiting retail to your space, you don't have you don't have a collateral to present demographics for the market. This is a good piece. Happy to share it with you. Another tool that we bring to the table is we are meeting face-to-face directly with these retailers. So the past year we haven't had any face-to-face meetings, but our first one we're going to have is Recon, and that's going to be held in December. Historically, it takes place in May of each year, and it's going to happen in May of 2022. But because we skipped this year, they wanted to have a big show at the end of the year, and fingers crossed. Depends on I guess what the variants do, but hopefully we intend to attend that show. But what this does is we represent Lake Worth Beach all across the country at these shows. ICSC, you probably know it as the International Council of Shopping Centers. They have recently rebranded within the last 2 weeks to Innovating Commerce and Serving Communities. So they're the biggest player in town. But I would say they've got directional shows for Florida, and then they have a yearly show that happens in August, typically in Orlando. I would say if you need to recruit retail to your space, attend these shows. It's a great way to get to know the decision makers and really interface. All right, so I'm gonna take you all through this program to help municipalities recruit retail to their markets. But I would say this can easily be adapted to if you're a landlord or you're trying to get additional retail into your market. These are some of the key areas that you really need to focus on. So we've talked a little bit about the importance of retail, and I won't go too far into this because I think we've hit it pretty head on. But retail enhances the quality of life. If you ever want to make a stink on a community's Facebook page, you get on there and you ask the question, what retailer do we want in Lake Worth Beach? And I guarantee you're going to get 500 responses. Anytime that we're on our development brokerage side, anytime we're prospecting a market, I'll get on there and ask the community, what do they want to see? What do they think is missing? And without fail, you always get hundreds of comments. So, retail is very polarizing. Everyone wants it, but practically no layperson can really understand, what makes the needle move for a national retail and what they want to see. Everybody thinks, we need a Costco and a Cheesecake Factory because hey, we like shopping there and not really putting much thought into what the retailer actually needs to go into a market. Retail increases placemaking. If you walk down downtown Lake Worth Beach, your small businesses are bustling. You've got a sense of place when you walk through downtown Lake Worth Beach. So a lot of communities don't have. So you have a great leg up on a lot of communities because frankly a lot of communities in Florida don't have downtowns. We also have a company within our company called Downtown Strategies that we work with downtowns where they historically traditionally don't have a downtown area. So retail, whether it be small business or national, really helps make a sense of place. Retail is also one of the few things that you can do in your community that pays you back. So investing dollars into retail, increases your property tax, increases the sales tax. So it really is an investment into your community, and retail grows the economy. So when we're promoting Lake Worth Beach, again, we're not looking at that city boundary map. We don't spend time on it. It's not important. What we want to do is we want to promote the trade area that is customized to the market, And we would then want to grow that trade area. We don't want to take the pie and cut it up into 10 pieces. We want to take the pie and make it bigger. So it's really, you know, bringing in new retail is going to grow your trade area. It's going to then pull in, you know, consumers that are in those higher demographic areas to shop in Lake Worth. But it's all about bringing in those goods and services that are not readily available to them into your market. And retail drives economic development. You know, very often we don't recruit industry. But I've heard, you know, from site selectors from industry that, hey, you know, we were planning to open up a location in this area. We were going to bring 300 jobs to the market, but we looked at the landscape, and you know, your market does not have the retail, you know, capacity to support this additional 300 jobs that we're bringing in. They would have no place to eat for lunch. Certainly retail is economic development. So now we've identified what is the importance of retail. Why do we need to focus on it? What are the 5 steps to organize for retail recruitment? So first of all, you got to assemble a team. You've got to have a clear vision where everyone's on the same page. You want to survey not only your stakeholders, but you also want to find avenues to survey your community. You got to come up with funding sources. Whether you hire a consultant or you do it yourself or you hire a broker, you're going to pay money to play, and that's really just you know the way it is. So. But again, it is every dollar you invest in retail recruitment is going to pay you back. And then you got to have that plan. So let's talk about assembling our team. You know, whether we're a CRA or a city, or a consultant, we have to appoint people that are going to have the responsibility and the bandwidth to really take on the responsibilities of getting all the collateral and really the effort that it takes to recruit retail. Then we got to have that vision. So we need to have a coherent vision of, you know, what is the custom story that's happening on the ground that we need to get to the retail market, and we all have to be on the same page. If 3 people are going after the project, you got to be telling the same story. You got to be unified in that voice. Surveying your stakeholders is vitally important. You know, if I'm an organization, we got to be very clear on, you know, what are the needs and wants that we have across our organization. But I can assure you, if you want to have a happy population, you know, survey your citizens. There's many ways you can do that. But find out what the community wants and what the community needs, and not that you can always cater and meet every demand. But it is good to know the overall sentiment of what your local population thinks the market needs and can support. Next, we talk about funding. Won't go too far into that, other than the fact that, you know, it does cost money to put all these things together. And then you got to plan. You got to look at your, you know, what is your zoning along your major retail corridor? Is it set up for future growth? What are your natural resources? Obviously, by rebranding Lake Worth to Lake Worth Beach, you put your best foot forward, and it's a great strategic move. You know, you got to promote that beach, and how can we drive traffic and get them to that area? And that's only going to increase, the sales that your local retailers are doing. So next, we'll talk about the 5 keys to success. So in the beginning of this venture, it's going to be a lot of data collection. We've provided some demographics, and we have access to those, and we can provide those on a whim. But you're going to want to assemble that data. You're going to put together your marketing plan, and then you really need to plan to make the outreach. And that's to the stakeholders, that's to tenant rep brokers, real estate directors, developers. You got to get the word out about what's happening. The next step in this, and probably the most time-consuming, is really taking an inventory of what properties that you have in the market. And if you're just a landlord, you don't need to go through that process, obviously. But if you're an organization, you really need to know what you have, do a SWOT analysis, find out what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and come up with a plan to sell against those. The next is know the players. Get to know your property owners. Get to know your local landlords. Get to know their brokers. Find ways to add value to them. So if you don't own a shopping center, you're helping bolster the overall retail community. You need to provide value to these people, because they can keep you plugged in. You can share information with, hey, here's what we're hearing from the retailers. What are you hearing? And maybe you can use some of that information to leverage to your shopping center, because I guarantee you that the shopping center owners are interfacing and talking to retailers that, that retailer passed on their specific location, but if you find out that this retailer that the community wants passed on that location, but we can get them in Lake Worth Beach, you can put a plan together to help facilitate that retailer coming into the market. So the challenges, so whether you're a big market, whether you're a small market, you're always going to have challenges that you need to overcome. So, the biggest challenge that we face when recruiting retail to Lake Worth Beach is just the sheer number of sites that are available. There's a lot of real estate available, but, putting together a 1 acre parcel for a, national fast casual restaurant is very difficult. We helped the local property owner assemble, I think, 17 different properties on a corner it took 3 years to assemble all those properties, but he's now got a national retailer on his site and plans to incorporate more. So, I would say the biggest challenges that Lake Worth Beach faces is just the size of the parcels and really assembling them to the appropriate size to accommodate a national retailer. The next is going to be your action plan. So everyone needs to have specific tasks, things they're accountable for, and make sure that everyone has the access to the resources, whether it be the marketing, collateral, the demographics, just armed to do the job. The next is going to be the 5 toolbox essentials. So you need to know your trade area, you need to understand those demographics, the market analysis, and then we're going to come up with our retail target. So we talked about trade area. I've kind of laid out the trade area for you, and can provide the back-end demographic report on that trade area for anybody that needs it. But yeah, defining the trade area, determining what are population demographics within those key drive times and radius rings that matter to national retailers. So the demographics, we talked about age, the population age, the number of population, the daytime population, median household income. Those are probably your top factors when recruiting the majority of retailers. Now, each retailer has their own specific criteria that they need and want, but for the most bang for your buck, I would assemble those key demographics. The next is going to be the market analysis, and this is a comprehensive look at a lot of the things we've already talked about. But understanding that leakage, how many dollars are escaping our community, where can we really focus in on capturing those? Looking at our trade area analysis, combining that retail inventory, and then having those vacancies, because without vacancies and opportunities, you really have no value you can provide to a retailer. It's not enough to reach out to Chipotle and say, hey, please come to Lake Worth. Of course, Chipotle knows where Lake Worth is. Of course, they've driven through the market, but if you can't provide them a value, as in, hey, I've got wind of a 3/4 acre parcel that is being assembled right now. I think it'd be a good fit for Chipotle. You've got to add value to these retailers when you reach out to them. So this is the type of collateral. This is the inlay for our site or community flyer that we created for Lake Worth Beach. Obviously, this is not Lake Worth Beach, but this is what it looks like for the average community. So it tells retailers, where is the retail, centrally located and congregated, because retail, they want to centralize in the community. They want to have that tailwind benefit of, if retailers are already shopping in a specific node in Lake Worth Beach, retailers typically don't want to pioneer a different side of the market where the national retail is not already located. So it's important that you're focusing on those areas that the national retail already exists. And then you want to come up with your target. So that is creating a prospect list of looking at the peers, looking at, a void analysis of what retail exists around us that we think makes sense in our community, and how do we go after those. Incentives is a big one. There's a lot of incentives tools and a lot of dollars out there, some realized and some unrealized. And incentives can be very polarizing, especially to the citizens that are paying taxes. It's, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're putting together an incentive deal to bring this national retailer that's going to do away with all our small businesses. Certainly not the case. National retail helps prop up small business, just as small business helps prop up national retail. The reason incentives are important is because, right now we're in a time of hyperinflation, whether that's transitory or not. Argument can be made for either way, but even without inflation right now, you know, the dollars that cost to build retail space per square foot has gone up tenfold, whereas the rents that retailers are willing to pay has trailed behind for a long way. So, the rent that these retailers are paying is really about the same that they were paying 10 years ago, but the price to build has gone up tremendously. So, that there is a delta that exists within the development world right now. Is it's not necessarily these developers being greasy and trying to line their pockets. It's, hey, we cannot build this space for $15 a square foot, and then maybe that if the retailers want to pay $15 per square foot, and we're building it, and hey, our pro forma says we can't build it for less than $35 per square foot. So, municipalities do have tools available to come in and help bridge that gap. So, what are the 5 elements for successful implementation? So it's about the blocking and tackling of the fundamentals, communication of the right word, mobilizing your team, connecting the dots, and then really rinse and repeat. So the fundamentals are the nuts and bolts of what is the existing conditions of our community and where do we need to be. So paying attention to those trends. If Chipotle is scaling down their model, they can fit on a smaller site. You need to be aware of that because maybe you have a opportunity in your market that didn't make sense for how Chipotle was building, a year ago, but it makes sense now. So it's you got to be aware of that. You have to know their demands for co-tenancy. You have to know their site criteria and their prototypes. The next is going to be communicating. So whether that is directly communicating with retailers through email, through phone call, there is directories that you can subscribe to get contact information for retailers. And also communicating with your brokers and landlords. So creating a channel that you are on a weekly or monthly basis, you're communicating with these and getting feedback and sharing ideas. It's vitally important that if you're an organization, you're proactively doing these things. To let your local community know what you're doing, because it can create a symbiotic relationship where they're sharing information with you as you're sharing it with them. And then mobilizing, delegate and promote stakeholders to really, proactively, if you're building out these resources and tools, and you have a local landlord that doesn't have a tenant rep and they're kind of taking it on their own, give them this information. It might help them out for sure. Connecting the dots. So this kind of describes, what we're doing at Retail Strategies every day. So we've got our network already built in. So we've got a Rolodex and personal relationships with these decision makers. But if you don't have that already, a great way to do this is join those industry organizations, whether that be the ICSC or Retail Live. It gives you opportunity to get face time. Now, you're not going to go to these events and come home with a deal. And we don't go to these events to do that either. What you're doing is you're getting FaceTime with these decision makers, so the time in between these shows, they'll answer your phone call because they know your name, they know your face, and you have a relationship built with them. So, the retail world, when it comes down to it, it's a very small knit community, and people don't forget names and faces, and if you can make your mark, it'll go a long way into helping you achieve success. And wash, rinse, and repeat. It is a vicious, endless cycle. Even us professionals that do this every day for a living, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I can get every retailer to pick up my call on the first dial, just like they can't get me on my first dial. Everybody's very busy. They're not responding to you because they don't like you or they don't want to talk to you. It's because retailers, especially nationals, get inundated. I had a retailer recently told me that he gets 300 site submittals per day, 300 per day. How can you ever wade through all that? So a lot of times it's not that first or second or third or fourth. It might be that fifth or sixth outreach that you make. But the bottom line is just don't give up. Be persistent. That's really where you're going to add the most value. So beyond that, I've developed a, kind of that next level of my, my 7 years experience in the business, my top 10 tips for retail real estate. And how you can kind of elevate yourself. So the first one is coming up with an elevator pitch. So whether you are developing an elevator pitch for your market or for your specific location, know it like the back of your hand, have it rehearsed that you can regurgitate it in a 30-second conversation or a 3 to 4 sentence email. Anything beyond that, people are gonna kind of lose interest, and you really want to get the main message out in a quick burst, but not reciting your demographics back. Show the main points, show the main value you're trying to add to someone, and have that in a very concise format. The next is going to be, creating a SWOT analysis. So understand what your community brings to the table and where you're lacking. It is vitally important that you know your weaknesses, and I say, people, communities ask me all the time, like, what are my weaknesses and how do I fix them? I'm not here to help you, fix your weaknesses. I want to hyper focus on your strengths. So what are your main strengths, and let's double down on those strengths and really sell to them. The weaknesses can sort themselves out, and there's things you can do to make incremental change in your weaknesses for sure. But I would say the most bang for your buck is really hyper focusing on the strengths you have in your market and your specific location. The next is going to be targeting the right retailers. You have to, you have to know who you are, what you are, and what the market can support. You can't jump from McDonald's to Cheesecake Factory overnight. You've got to have incremental change. Because retailers use their competition and co-tenants as kind of like an indicator species, if you will. If they come into a market and see that there is a big lack of the, if I'm a fast casual brand and I see there's a huge lack of the, the quick service or fast food, if you will, I've got to wonder, what's the deal? Why are these very obvious pieces missing from the market? So, incremental changes will add up to make big changes over time. The next is going to be, kind of goes back to honing in that prospect list. Look at your surrounding markets. I guarantee you there are retailers that are actively operating in markets around you that you want in Lake Worth Beach that are either lagging behind in sales because they made a bad decision and went to a wrong site or the wrong market. They're maybe having a dispute with a landlord, and they like their space, they like the market, but hey, the landlord's going up $10 per square foot on their rent. Their sales don't support that, and they have no case to leave. So, I would say not necessarily poaching, but look at the surrounding market. You never know. I never take it for granted that just assuming a retailer's so close to Lake Worth Beach that they wouldn't dare opening up a location. Sometimes they'll simply relocate because you offer them a better a path of least resistance. This kind of goes to the city side, but I think it would also really applies to if I'm a landlord and I have the opportunity and ability, and there are good properties that are available on the market. I think it's a good idea to land bank good properties, and I think Lake Worth Beach and the CRA has done a really good job of being taking advantage of some good properties that have come available, and I think we're starting to see some catalyst projects happening because of that. I commend those efforts and hope they continue. But sometimes if nobody else is going to do it, by golly, I'm going to take the responsibility on, and maybe it's some short-term pain for long-term gain. But again, this is the long game, and you are making a long-term investment in your community. Defining the incentive policies and cutting the red tape. There are cities in Florida that have hired us just to be their PR firm to essentially get the message out to say, hey, our community used to be very difficult to open up a location in because our planning and zoning committee just really, they really got amped up on being known for, hey, we're gonna, a developer submits their plans, no matter how good it is, we're gonna pop our red stamp on it and send it back to them, and they've got to submit 5 iterations before we approve their site. Don't do that. I mentioned the retail world is a very small knit community. That the word gets out on that, and it takes a long time to change. So having an A to Z development policy to allow retailers, if a retailer wants to be in your community and it's a retailer you want, make that process straightforward for them. And then promote value add. And what I mean by this is, I said that, we're 25 square feet per person in the United States. We're completely overstored, completely overbuilt. if there are opportunities for redevelopment, higher, better use, and readaptive use of space, which I think it's a good bit that's happening in the market right now. I think that's the way. So how does a developer overcome developing for a national retail that they can't build ground up for? Well, hey, look at the replacement costs. So the replacement costs of backfilling and redeveloping an existing location, makes more sense than a new store. Absolutely, go after it. And then focus on sustainable retail and mixes of use, which is obviously happening in the market right now. I think it's the future. The future retail development is going to be retail. It's going to be healthcare. It's going to be residential. It's going to be a combination of all of those. We're no longer going to have these centers built out that is just retail. You've got to have a variety of use. You got to have people coming to the center for just goods and services and things like that. And that's why we're seeing grocery becoming the dominant anchor of most shopping centers, because it's, grocery is something that you're gonna be going to on a weekly basis. The clothing has been so disrupted that we used to see a lot of these TJ Maxx anchored centers, which are still happening, but a lot of times they're really having that grocery component. And target franchisees. Franchisees are, a lot of times for these national brands, they are the decision maker. You can go after the real estate director and they'll say, hey, corporate loves the market. We don't have an operator, or we got to get operator approval. Sometimes in my efforts, I will cut through that layer of red tape and I will directly go after the franchisees. So I'm going to make a list of, what are the businesses around the market, and I'm going to call those specific locations, find out what time that operator, that business owner is going to be in. And maybe they're in Tuesday between 11 and 1, and that's their regular hours in that location. Well, I'm going to put a note down that says, hey, next Tuesday I'm calling that location, and I'm going to speak to the operator directly. And that's one way that you can get to the decision makers. And then finally, I'll end it up, focus on quality of life. You want to bring in those uses that we know are going to be sustainable. Like I said, focus on skating to where the puck is going, not where the puck is. I'll attribute that to Wayne Gretzky, but it's good advice for everybody. Don't focus on where you've been and where you are now. Really focus on that long-term vision. So that concludes my presentation.